Hey y'all, welcome back to another week of What's for Dinner. I'm sure that a lot of you guys noticed I did not post one of these last week for the first time in a long time. I'm sorry if I disappointed any of you guys, but life has been crazy and I just needed the small little break. But I am hoping to get back on a normal schedule now. I only have 4 meal ideas for this video, so I hope that's okay. But first up, I am making some cheeseburger quesadillas. So I started off by browning up 1 pound of ground beef that I had seasoned with some Lawry's seasoned salt. I drained off the grease and added in several dashes of Worcestershire sauce, and that is literally it for the hamburger part. So to a large skillet, I have melted some butter, and then I laid down a burrito size tortilla, and I'm just going to layer that with some shredded cheese, the ground beef, and some pickles. Once that cheese was nice and melted and the tortillas were crispy, I removed it to a separate cutting board and I just cut it into wedges using a pizza cutter. If you go to make this, I recommend that you use 1 tortilla versus the 2. That way you can fold it over and the fillings won't fall out. That is how I did the kids, and theirs worked out a whole lot better. But now I'm going to whip up a quick little dipping sauce, and all that is a combination of ketchup, mayo, mustard, and a few dashes of paprika. And if you're new here, anytime I follow a recipe, I always have it linked in my description box. But here is Josh's plate. I gave him a whole quesadilla and he said it was way too much food, so one of those could easily feed 2 people. And I just served it with a side of these fries that I cooked up in my air fryer, and that's what Josh and the kids had. Also gave them a few apple slices, and then I try to go a little bit lighter. I just served mine over some lettuce. I try to do like some lettuce wraps, and then I have my meat, the sauce, cheese, and pickles. Super messy, but so yummy. Up next, we had breakfast for dinner, so I made some ham, egg, and cheese sliders. So I'm just taking my slider buns and I'm placing those in the bottom of a casserole dish. I did cut this recipe in half because I knew there was no way that we would eat 12 of them, but I'm just going to layer that with some deli honey ham, scrambled eggs, and some shredded cheese. Now it is time to jazz these up a bit, so I have just whipped up a quick little spread, and all that is some softened cream cheese, Dijon mustard, and some garlic powder. I'm just going to take it and I'm going to spread it evenly over the top of the buns, and that's going to get placed on top of the cheese. So next I have just melted a little bit of butter in my microwave, and I'm spreading that evenly over the top, and then I'm going to be sprinkling on some everything bagel seasoning. And in case you didn't know, you can find this seasoning at Walmart. I know some people think you can only get it at Trader Joe's, so I wanted to throw that in there. But I'm just covering my dish with some tin foil, and that's going to go in the oven at 350 degrees for 15 minutes. And then I'm going to pull the foil off and let it finish for an additional 5 minutes. To go along with the sliders, I also made some fried potatoes. I used to make these all the time when I first moved out on my own, but it has been forever since I made them. So to my skillet, I have just added in some butter, and I used 2 different types of oil because I ran out of the olive oil. I don't know if it's bad to mix oils like that, but oh well, it worked out in the end. But now I am just adding in some russet potatoes that I have peeled and diced up into bite-sized pieces, and I'm just seasoning those pretty well with some Lawry's seasoning salt. And I didn't show it, but I also added in some black pepper. But I'm just tossing those to coat in the seasonings and the butter and the oil. I'm going to pop my lid on and just cook those until they are fork tender. So here is everything put together. I just served it with a side of green grapes. And then once again, I try to be a little bit healthier and I skipped out on the potatoes. But those sliders were the bomb. The spread on them is what made them really amazing. I highly recommend these and I think they're perfect for breakfast, lunch, dinner. It doesn't even matter, but y'all need to make them. Here I am making a slow cooker pulled pork chili. So I have a boneless pork roast that's a little under 2 pounds and I'm just going to place that into the bottom of my crock pot. I have also whipped up a rub to rub on the meat. So all that's in this cup is some onion and garlic powder, chili powder, cumin, cayenne pepper, salt and black pepper, and some brown sugar. So lots of yummy flavors going on. I'm just going to get in there with my hands and I'm going to rub the meat down on both sides really well. Now I'm just going to start dumping things in. So I have a 28-ounce can of tomato sauce, followed by a 28-ounce can of petite diced tomatoes. You will also need 2 cans of chili beans. You don't want to drain or rinse these because you would just be washing away all of that yummy flavor. You will also need 2 cups of beef broth or a whole can, and also a few dashes of hot sauce. My bottle was almost empty, so I just finished it off. And then you need a half a cup of barbecue sauce. I'm just using this sugar-free version because that's what I had on hand, but obviously feel free to use your favorite brand. And then I'm just going to gently stir in that barbecue sauce. I was kind of making a mess. I have never had my crock pot this full before, but I'm just going to pop a lid on and I'm going to cook this on low for 10 hours. Normally I wouldn't have such a long cook time, but when I put the meat in, it was still kind of frozen, so I just wanted to be sure that it was fully cooked. So this would be the perfect meal if you work outside of the home and you just wanted to put this on before you went to work, and then you'd come home after a long day and have a hot bowl of chili. But I just removed my pork to a separate bowl, shredded it up with 2 forks, and then added it back on into the chili, stirred it in, and it is ready to be served. So I just topped my bowl with some shredded cheese and sour cream, and I forgot to show it, but I did throw in some crushed saltine crackers just like I would with a regular chili. But we love this recipe. It was something different and it is perfect for fall time, and it made a ton. So we had leftovers the next day and then I just froze what was left. For the last meal idea, I'm going to be making a vegetarian pot pie. So here I am just dicing up some peeled russet potatoes and adding those to a saucepan, and I'm just going to boil those in some salted water until they are tender. I'm also going to be taking some carrots that I have peeled and I am just chopping those up. You'll need about 1.5 cups. To a separate pot, I am heating up some olive oil and I'm just going to saute the carrots around for about 5 to 7 minutes. If you wanted to add an onion, you would do it at this point as well. Once those are done, I just added those to a separate mixing bowl so that I could use my pan again. I'm also going to add in my drained and cooked potatoes, and I'm just going to put those to the side and let those chill for a bit. So to that same pot, I have added in a couple tablespoons of butter as well as a couple tablespoons of olive oil, and I'm just going to let that melt and heat up together. And then I'm going to be adding in a 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour. Then I'm just taking my whisk and I am going to stir that around. It's going to get really crumbly and weird, but it all works out. So I'm just going to cook that for a couple of minutes to be sure to cook out that flour taste. And then I'm going to slowly add in a mixture of 2 cups of vegetable broth and 1.5 cups of milk. And I'm just going to stir that really good to make sure that there are no lumps remaining. And I'm just going to let that simmer and thicken up. And then I'm going to season it with some salt, black pepper. The recipe called for some thyme, but we don't really care for that spice, so I decided to add in some rubbed sage. I thought that would be a good flavor combination. And then I'm also just adding in some onion powder since I didn't use an actual onion. And then lastly, some garlic powder. And I'm just going to give that another stir to get all of those seasonings distributed. And then I'm going to add back in the cooked veggies, followed by 3/4 cup of frozen peas. And then I'm just going to coat those veggies in the sauce, and it's going to get dumped out into a 9x13 casserole dish. And then I'm just going to pop this in the oven at 400 degrees for 18 minutes. And then I'm going to pull it out and I'm going to top it with this puff pastry. This was my very first time ever using puff pastry, so I wasn't even sure what to expect. But you're supposed to kind of stretch it out and drape it over the sides of the baking dish. At least that's what I took from the instructions, but I worked with it the best that I could. It wasn't too difficult. But next, I just took a sharp knife and I cut 3 slits down the middle. That way the steam can escape when it goes to cook. And I'm just going to place that back into the oven for an additional 15 minutes. And here is what it looked like when it came out. It didn't get as brown as I wanted it to, but at the same time, I didn't want to overcook it since I've never worked with puff pastry, but it's all good. It tasted amazing. I didn't serve it with any sides. It didn't need it, but I was seriously blown away by this recipe. I wasn't expecting much from it, but we loved it. But that's going to wrap up another week. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye, guys.